There are 7,641 islands in the Philippines. Most Americans can name maybe 3 of them. What almost nobody talks about is how much of that country is still forest, not park forest, not trail forest with a gift shop at the bottom. Old forest, jungle that was already standing there before the Spanish came, before the Americans came, before anyone wrote anything down. The people who live at the edge of that jungle have rules. They don't call them superstitions. They call them manners. You don't cut certain trees. You come inside before dark. And when you pass a mound, or an old tree, or a patch of ground that feels wrong under your feet, you say 3 words out loud. Tabi tabi po. Excuse me, I'm just passing through. Because the belief, and I mean the working belief, the one followed by grown men with machetes and college degrees, is that the jungle is not empty. It's occupied. Tonight's stories come from letters and messages sent to this channel. A surveyor, a nurse, a boy who grew up in California and thought none of this applied to him. They all went into the deep woods of the Philippines, and they all came back with the same advice. So keep the lights off, let the rain play, and if you hear your name called tonight from somewhere it shouldn't be, do what they do. Don't answer. Story 1. I grew up in Daly City, California, where the fog rolls in off the ocean every afternoon like it's on a schedule, and where half my street had family in the same 3 provinces back home. My mom is from a barangay called San Isidro, about 20 minutes by tricycle from the town of Dolores, in Quezon Province, right in the foothills of Mount Banahaw. If you don't know that mountain, it's the Holy One. People make pilgrimages there, healings, visions, the works. What the pilgrimage websites don't tell you is that the mountain has rules. The villages around it follow them, and nobody writes the rules down, because everybody's grandmother is the rule book. Mine was LOH-. 4'11", maybe 100 pounds if she'd just eaten, and the single most feared person in our barangay, in a loving way. The summer I turned 26, I flew back with my mom for the fiesta, and the night we arrived, Lola sat me down on the porch and gave me the rules. She held my wrist while she talked. That's how you knew it was serious. Rule 1. Be inside before the Angelus. 6 o'clock. The church bells ring. The whole barangay stops for a minute, and after that, the night is not yours anymore. Rule 2. When you pass the big tree at the bend, or the old mounds behind the chapel, or any place that feels like it wants you to hurry, you say it out loud. Tabi tabi po. It means excuse me. I'm just passing through. You are asking permission. Most of the time, permission is given. Rule 3. If you hear your name called at night, and you are not 100% sure who called it, do not answer. Even if it's my voice. Ah, nach, she said. Even if it's your mother's. You come and find our faces first. If the face is there, you answer. If you only heard the voice, you let it call. I want to be honest with you. I laughed. I have a computer science degree. I fix code for a living. I said something like, Lola, it's 2019, and she just looked at me with those black eyes and didn't say anything at all, which was worse than any lecture. My cousin Jun thought the whole thing was funny too. We were the same age, we'd spent every other summer together since we were kids, and that second week we did what we always did. Walked to the SAH store for cigarettes and a bottle of Red Horse, drank on the basketball court, listened to somebody's uncle destroy a karaoke classic. Around 9, I walked back alone, because June had gone off with a girl from the next street. Now, the road back loops around a grove of balete trees. If you've never seen a balete, picture a fig tree that decided one trunk wasn't enough and grew into a cathedral. Trunks braided into trunks, a canopy that eats the sky. The old people say a balete is not a tree, it's a house, and you don't find out who lives there unless they want you to. The road around the grove took 12 minutes. The path through it took 3. And I had drunk 2 Red Horses and I needed to relieve myself, so I took the shortcut. Halfway through, under the biggest ba-la-a-a-a, the one with roots you could lose a tricycle in. I stopped and did the dumbest thing I have ever done in my life. I peed on the roots of that tree, in the dark, without saying a word. I remember laughing about it, out loud, like an idiot, like a tourist in my own family's village. Then I noticed something. The cicadas had stopped, all of them, at once, like somebody had switched off a radio. And the air got thick. That's the only way I can say it. The air got thick, and it got close, the way a room gets close when somebody is standing behind you. I got out of there. I didn't run, because running felt like admitting something, but I walked fast. La was asleep when I got home. I didn't say anything. I woke up at 3 in the morning with a fever that came out of nowhere. One of those fevers that feels like it's cooking you from the inside. And through the fever, I heard my name, Marco Daniel Reyes. Nobody calls me that. Nobody. My mom calls me Marco. My cousins call me Koi. The only person who ever used my full name was my grandfather, Lo Danny, and he had been dead for 6 years. It was his voice. I want you to sit with that. It was his exact voice, the one I'd known my whole life, coming from the yard, patient, a little annoyed, the way he used to call me in for dinner. Marco Daniel Reyes, come out here. Outside, our dog Bante was barking himself hoarse, and then, right in the middle of a bark, he stopped. Not trailed off, stopped, like a switch. I got up. The fever had me half drunk, and I went to the window and looked through the slats. Under the San Tol tree, maybe 15 feet away, my grandfather was standing in the yard. He was wearing the white barong we buried him in. And here is the detail that has kept me up for 3 years. The face was right. Every line of it was right. But when the voice came again, Marco Daniel Reyes, the mouth didn't move. The voice just arrived, the way sound arrives from a radio in another room. My hand was reaching for the latch. That's the part I don't like admitting. Part of me was so happy to see him. Then I felt my grandmother's fingers around my wrist from a week earlier. Even if it's my voice, Anak. I didn't answer. I stepped back from the window, sat on the floor with my back against the wall, and shook until the roosters started. It called 3 times. The last time, it said something else. In my grandfather's voice, patient, a little amused, it said, Tabi Tabi Po. In the morning, there were footprints in the wet earth around the house, bare feet, longer than any foot I've ever seen. They circled the house twice and ended under my window, where they had stood still for a long time. You could tell. The mud was deeper there, churned, like the ground had been holding up a weight. My Elohala didn't yell at me. She looked at the footprints, looked at my face, and said, Get dressed. We're going to Mang Isko. Mang Isko was the Ahalbularyo, the healer. 2 barangays over, up a dirt road, in a house full of drying leaves and candle smoke. He did the ritual with tahwas, that's alum, the same stuff my mom kept in the kitchen for pickles. He passed the stone over me while he prayed, then burned it in a candle flame, and when it cooled he turned it so I could see. A tree. The alum had set into the shape of a tree, and at the roots of it there was a small lump that I swear to you looked like a man, standing very still. You offended someone, Mang Isko said. He wasn't angry. He sounded tired. You marked what belongs to them. He told my Loh what to prepare, and before dawn the next day, I walked back into that grove with a plate of rice and egg, 3 coins, and a cigarette. I set them at the roots of the Ba Elete, and I said out loud, to nobody, to the tree, I am sorry. I didn't know. I ask your permission to pass, and to be forgiven. I felt stupid. Right up until the moment the cicadas, which had been screaming the whole walk-in, went silent all at once. The air pressed in. I stayed very still, kneeling in the mud with my offering plate like a fool. Then, like a long breath let out, the sound came back, all of it, everywhere at once, and the pressure was gone. My fever broke that afternoon. Mang Isko walked me out, and he gave me the warning I've carried ever since. You spoke when you should have asked, he said. Now it knows you answer to your name. When you go home, to America, if you ever smell tobacco where nobody smokes, put a little food outside your door. Rice is fine. It is only visiting. Let it visit. I flew home to Daly City 2 weeks later. That was 3 years ago. In February, at 3 in the morning, I woke up because my nose was full of cigar smoke. Thick, sweet, expensive smoke. Nobody in my building smokes. The fog was pressed against the windows, and I lay there in the dark, perfectly still, because from the hallway, right outside my door, in a voice that sounded like wet leaves moving, something said 2 words. Tabi tabi po. It said it in my voice. I didn't answer. In the morning I put rice and an egg outside the door like an old man, and my neighbors think I'm strange, and I do not care. It was only visiting. I let it visit. But I keep rice in the cupboard now, always. And if you're ever at the edge of the trees in my mother's province, and you feel the air get thick, do what I should have done. Say it first. Story 2. A road engineer in the Sierra Madre, and the 3 trees his crew refused to cut. My name is stamped on the plans of a road in Quezon province that I will never drive on. That is not a figure of speech. I was the engineer of record. I signed the survey, and if you ever travel that road, out on the Pacific slope of the Sierra Madre, you will notice, if you're the kind of person who notices things, that for no visible reason, the road takes a long, lazy curve around a stand of 3 trees. No river, no cliff, no property wall, just a curve and 3 Balete standing in cleared land, close enough to the shoulder that trucks brush the outer branches when it rains. The drawings say the curve avoids an obstruction. On the form, the line where you describe the obstruction is blank. This was 2009. Farm to Market Road, 6 kilometers, meant to get copra and rice down from the upland barangays, before the roads turned to soup every monsoon. I had a crew of 9. My foreman was a man named Mang Domeng, 62 years old, built out of rope and leather, and he had cut roads through that range since before I was born. The first time he walked the center line with me, he stopped at kilometer 4 and went very quiet. The line ran straight through 3 Balete trees. Old ones. The biggest was wider than the site office we eventually built. We go around, he said. I showed him the numbers. Going around added 400 meters, a retaining wall, and 3 weeks we did not have. Manila had already moved the funding once. I was 31 years old and I believed, sincerely, that the world ran on load calculations and proper drainage. I told him, kindly, because he was old enough to be my father, that the trees were coming down. Mang Domeng looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Engineer, I will work your road. But I will not touch those trees, and neither will my sons. And I am telling you the same thing my father told the Americans who surveyed the first road through here in 1909. That road is not on any map. Ask yourself why. I should tell you, the barangay captain backed me. The landowners backed me. Trees are trees and progress is progress. And I had a deadline. We brought the backhoe in on a Monday. The backhoe died at the roots of the first Balete at 9:40 in the morning. Diesel engine, no warning, no smoke. It simply stopped, the way a radio stops when you pull the plug. The mechanic found nothing wrong. It started again at the yard and ran all afternoon. Tuesday, we tried again. It died at the same spot. The operator swore to me he heard the engine note change first, drop low, as if the machine were laboring under a load, and then silence. The mechanic found nothing wrong. New filters, bled the lines, nothing. Wednesday, we sent 2 men in with chainsaws, because I am embarrassed to say I was now in a fight with a tree. Both chains snapped within the hour. New chains, both of them. I held the broken links in my hand. Chains don't fail that way. Links were twisted sideways, opened up from the inside, every single one at the cutting tooth. Thursday, a branch came down out of the big Balete and crushed the left hand of a chainman named Roldan. There was no wind. I was standing 20 meters away, and I want to be precise about this, because precision is my whole profession. The branch did not break. A broken branch falls at the joint. With a crack you can hear across the site. This one came down whole and heavy, straight down, and it swung toward him on the way. There was no wind that morning. I checked the anemometer myself because I knew nobody would believe me. That Friday, at camp, I smelled cigar smoke for the first time. Thick, sweet, expensive smoke, drifting through the tents at midnight. I went tent to tent, certain I'd catch somebody. Nobody was smoking. Half my crew chewed tobacco, and none of them could have afforded a cigar like that if they'd saved a year. And that was the week Estong started walking in his sleep. Estong was the new hire. 24, quiet, from a fishing barangay down the coast, strong as a kara bayu, and about as talkative. The night watchman found him at 2 in the morning, standing at the edge of the grove in the dark, barefoot, eyes open, facing the big Balete. When they shook him awake, he was calm. That was the worst part. He was perfectly calm. "The big man is smoking," Estong said. "He wants to see the plan." I asked him what big man. He looked at me, the way you look at someone asking a stupid question. He said, "The one who lives in the tree, engineer. He has seen every plan for this road since before your grandfather. He wants to see yours." I didn't sleep the rest of that night. In the morning I did the math I should have done in the beginning, and I found, God help me, that the curve was only 9 days, not 3 weeks, if we moved a borrow pit. I signed the revision before lunch. I told Manila it was a soil stability issue. Manila does not care why. Manila cares about signatures. But we had already hurt the big tree. On the first day, before the backhoe died, the bucket had taken 1 bite out of the trunk, a gash about 1 meter long, deep enough to expose the pale wood. White sap had run out of it, run down the bark in slow threads, and I remember the strangeness of it, because sap weeps and stops. This did not stop. An hour later, the bark was still wet. The night before we broke camp, Estong disappeared. We searched with the barangay tahnods, 30 men with flashlights, and I will remember this until I die. The dogs would not go into the grove. These were hunting dogs, dogs that chased boar through bamboo thickets, and they planted their feet at the tree line with their hackles up, whimpering, and no dragging or cursing moved them 1 step further. So we went in without them. We found Estong at dawn. He was 40 feet up in the gashed Balete, sitting on a branch directly above the wound in the trunk, barefoot, unhurt, fast asleep. It took an hour to get him down. He remembered nothing after dinner. The mud on his legs was black and greasy, and it smelled of cigar ash. Our soil man tested it against every borrow pit and cut in the barangay. It matched nothing. He told me, off the record, that if he had to guess, he would say it was not soil at all. It was ash, all the way through, compacted, years of it. Estong was 24 years old. The hair at his temples had gone white overnight, 2 streaks, neat as paint. He had been a chain smoker since he was 15, and from that morning he never smoked again. Someone offered him a cigarette at the Despe Dida, and he pushed it away and said, very quietly, "It tastes like a funeral now." He went back to fishing. I asked him once, months later, what he saw up there in the tree. He was a polite man, and he answered me. He said, "Engineer, I did not see anything. I was seen." Then he got in his boat. The road was finished the next summer. I was transferred to a flood control project in Pampanga, and I built my career, and I am good at my job, and I tell people I am a rational man. But some years ago I requested the as-built plans from the regional office, because I wanted to see what the record said. The road curves around 3 trees. The stated reason is an obstruction. The field where you describe the obstruction is blank. There is no tree on the plan. There never was. And there is one more thing. Our survey assistant had taken photos all through the job. Film, not digital. And the rolls were developed weeks after we left. I have the prints in a folder in my desk. Most are the usual thing. Men by a theodolite. A culvert pour. The camp at dusk. One photo shows the tents from the grove side. Late afternoon. Everyone at the cook fire. At the edge of the frame, between the camp and the trees, There is a shape I first took for two trunks close together in shadow. It is not two trunks. It is one figure, and it is too tall, and about 9 feet up, level with where its face would be. There is a small orange ember, burning steady in the daylight. In the photograph, it is facing the camera. We were 9 men in that camp for 2 months, and in every other photo, it stood outside the frame. That is the part I think about. It was always there, just past the edge of every picture, watching the road being planned. They got their road. It goes around. Every map agrees, and nobody wrote down why. Story 3. 9 hikers went up Mount Cristobal. You already know the number. If you hike in the Philippines, you know about Mount Banahaw, the holy mountain. Healings, pilgrimages, people crawling up the trails on their knees during Holy Week. What the travel blogs leave out is that Banahaw has a twin, Mount Cristobal, right beside it. Same massif, maybe an hour between the 2 trailheads by road. Banahaw is the mountain people prey on. Cristobal is the mountain people disappear on. Ask any guide in Dolores. They will take you up Banahaw at midnight if you ask nicely. Getting one of them to take you up Cristobal is a different conversation, and that conversation always ends with the same piece of advice. Count yourselves. Count yourselves often, because the mountain adds. There were 9 of us. There were 9 of us. College friends from Manila, all 22 or 23, the kind of group that plans a hike for 3 months and trains for it by buying new shoes. Me, my best friend Mark, who could not take anything seriously if his life depended on it. Denise, who organized everything. Kiko, who filmed everything, and 5 others. We registered at the barangay hall. We paid the fee, and we hired a guide named Kuya Bong, a small leathery man with a BOH low on his hip, who looked at our group the whole time we were signing the logbook, counting us. I noticed that even then, before we stepped off, he gave us 3 rules, and he made us repeat them back. 1. We count at every rest stop, out loud, by name. 2. If the trail turns strange, if you pass the same tree twice, you stop. You wear your shirt inside out, and you do not panic, because panic is what it feeds on. 3. If you hear someone from this group call you, and you cannot see their face, you do not answer, and you do not go. A voice is not your friend. A face is your friend. You wait for the face. Mark laughed, of course. Kuyabong did not. The lower trail was farmland, then secondary forest, and then, maybe 2 hours in, Cristobal showed us what it was. Mossy forest, the locals call it. Trees wearing green fur. Fog that came and went in panels, so 1 minute you could see 30 meters, and the next you could see your own boots and nothing else. Rain on and off, the fine kind that doesn't fall so much as hang in the air and settle on you. It was beautiful. I want to be fair to the mountain. It was the most beautiful forest I have ever walked in. That's the bait, I think. The first rest stop, Denise counted us, out loud, finger on each head. She got to 10. We all laughed. Count again, someone said. She counted again. 9. Mark accused her of counting Kuyabong, or counting herself twice, and we moved on. And I remember Kuyabong did not move on. He stood there, looking back down the trail for a long moment, one hand resting on his BOH low, the way you rest a hand on a doorknob. The second stop, Kiko counted 10. He counted twice, got 9 the second time, and swore at his own finger. And that time nobody laughed, because the fog had closed in, and somewhere between the first stop and the second, the trail had gone quiet. No birds. On Banahaw that close, you hear birds the whole way up. On Cristobal, that afternoon, we walked in a forest with no bird song at all, just the tick of water, off leaves and our own breathing. The third count is the one I dream about. We were strung out on a narrow trail in single file. I was up front, right behind Kuyabong, and Mark was beside me at a wide spot, telling some joke, doing voices. I could hear him fine. And then, from the back of the line, Denise called out, "Mark, wait up, you're falling behind." Mark was beside me. I was looking at him. He stopped mid-sentence, and turned around with me, and we both looked back down the line, through a thin gap in the fog, and at the back of the line, maybe 20 meters behind the last of us, there was a figure on the trail. It had Mark's red jacket. It had Mark's build. It stood the way Mark stands, weight on one hip. It was not doing anything wrong. That is what I cannot make anyone understand. It was not shambling. It was not twisted. It was just standing on the trail behind us in the fog, at exactly the distance where detail runs out. We started walking again. It started walking. We stopped. It stopped. 20 meters. It never closed the distance, and it never fell further back. It matched us, and nobody said anything for a long time, because saying it out loud would make it ours, and as long as we didn't say it, it was only the fog playing a joke. Then we passed the tree. A big narra, split down the middle by old lightning, both halves still alive, an unforgettable tree. We had all photographed it on the way up. We passed it, and 40 minutes later we passed it again, and Mark made the joke we were all thinking, something about the mountain having two of everything, and nobody laughed, and 40 minutes after that we passed it a third time, and the trail was going downhill every time. I checked my altimeter, downhill, and still we came back to the same split tree from the same direction. "Ligaw," Kuyabong said. "Led astray. He made us stop, and he went down the line doing things I would have teased him about at breakfast. Every shirt inside out. He tied us together with rope, waist to waist, and he told us, from here, nobody answers anybody. If you need something, touch the shoulder in front of you. If you hear your name from the trees, you do not turn your head, whatever it says, however well it says it." We had been walking maybe 20 minutes in that silence, roped together in our inside-out shirts, when the counting started. It came from the tree line to our left, moving with us, keeping pace in the undergrowth. A voice. I knew the voice the way you know your own hands. It was Mark's voice, and it was counting us, gently, almost kindly, the way a teacher counts children on a field trip. 1, 2, 3. Mark was roped in front of me. I watched his shoulders come up around his ears. I watched him start to cry without making a sound. And I want you to know, none of us made a sound. 9 people and a guide walking in total silence, while the forest counted us in our friend's voice. It reached 9. There was a pause you could have hung a flag from, and then, satisfied, warm, pleased with itself, it said, 10. Kuyabong did not break stride. Louder, over his shoulder, without turning, he said, "Keep walking. It is only counting. It has been counting since the first stop. Do not give it a name it can keep." We walked out of that mountain at dawn. I don't know how. At some point the fog opened all at once, the way a door opens, and there was a view, and roofs below us, and a dog barking somewhere ordinary. The counting had stopped an hour before, or we had stopped being able to hear it. At the trailhead, Kuyabong untied the rope, checked our faces one by one, counted us by name twice, and only then sat down on a rock and lit a cigarette with hands that shook. The woman at the store by the barangay hall brought us instant coffee and would not take money for it. She had seen it before, she said. The mountain lets you go when it has had its fun. Then she said the thing I have carried with me ever since, in the tone you would use to warn somebody about a pickpocket. "It only borrows," she said, "but check your photographs. Sometimes it forgets to give back." Kiko had filmed everything, the way he always did. That night, 9 of us sat in a room in Lukban and watched the clips on his phone, and we got to the last clip from the fog, shot from the front of the line, looking back. We counted the figures walking behind the camera. 10. 9 of them we could name. The 10th walked in the middle of the line, between Denise and Kiko, in a grey hoodie with the hood up. Nobody owned a grey hoodie. Nobody remembers it walking there, and we were roped together, waist to waist. And in the clip, the rope dips and rises with 10 waists, and it walks with us, patient, at our pace, for the whole 40 seconds of the video. It never once turns around. I am grateful for that every day of my life. We don't hike anymore. Mark moved to Winnipeg. He says the cold keeps things honest. Kiko deleted the clip, and then deleted it from the cloud, and then smashed the phone, and I do not blame him. But I still count. Elevators, jeepneys, the line at the bank. Old habit. 9 of us went up that mountain. I know exactly what walked down with us, because we counted it, out loud, in a room with the lights on. And I will never tell you what number the mountain thinks I am. Story 4. A nurse in Manila, and the reason she checks the windows first. I work the night shift at a hospital in Manila, pediatric ward. 22 years now. New nurses always ask me the same question after their first month. Why do you check the windows first, ma'am? The babies cry. You go to the windows. Why not the incubators? I tell them it's an old habit. That's the truth. But it is not the whole truth. I never answer properly, because the proper answer sounds insane. The ward is on the 3rd floor. The windows do not open. There is nothing outside them but 40 feet of night air. And still, when a baby cries at 3 in the morning, my feet take me to the glass first. Every time. Because of the whole truth. The whole truth happened when I was 8 years old, in a barrio outside a sugar town in Negros Occidental, where the cane fields ran from our backyard to the edge of the world. If you have never seen sugarcane country, picture grass taller than a man, dense as a wall, planted in rows that go to the horizon. Wind moves through it in waves, and the sound it makes is exactly like an audience, whispering, shifting, applauding something you can't see. We played in the edges of it as children. We were not allowed past the first 3 rows, and we were not allowed outside at all, after the Angelus, because Darpit Hapon, the dusk, belongs to them, whoever they are. My grandmother never explained. You don't explain weather. At 6 o'clock the bells rang in town, and whatever my grandmother was doing, shelling beans, hanging laundry, mid-sentence, she stopped and prayed, and every door on our street closed at the same minute, like the whole barrio was one house shutting itself for the night. We children thought it was funny. We did not understand we were watching a lock being turned. There was one rule above the others. My mother drilled it into us the way other mothers drill, looking both ways before you cross. If you ever hear a baby crying in the cane, you do not follow it. You do not answer it. You come inside and you tell a grown-up, because a baby cannot be in the cane. Anach. There is no baby in the cane. It was harvest season. I remember the smell of the burning, sweet and black, and the ash falling on the laundry. My little brother Nonoy was 5. He was a quiet boy, the kind who sits in a corner with one toy truck all afternoon, and that afternoon nobody could find him. My mother checked the neighbors, the well, the chapel. By 6 o'clock she was standing at the edge of our yard shouting his name into the cane line, and here is the thing I understood only years later. She did not go in. A woman who would have fought a kara bow for her children stood at the edge of that field and would not step past the last row of grass, because the Angelus had rung, and after the Angelus, the cane is not ours. The men organized. My father came home from the mill, and the first thing he did was fill his pockets with rock salt, and nobody laughed. They took flashlights and BOH lows. Nobody searched alone. I noticed that even at 8 years old, the men paired off without being told, and my grandmother did not go with them. She lit the candle at the altar and started the oración, the old prayer, in a low, fast whisper that did not pause for breath, and she did not once look at the window. And while the adults were shouting at each other in the yard, I heard it. A baby, crying, in the cane, maybe 20 feet in, new, hungry cries, the kind that pull at something behind your ribs. And then I heard my brother answer it, 40 feet ahead of me, walking into the cane between the rows, going Nonoy. 5 years old, in his sando and shorts, walking slow and calm, and saying, "I'm coming, baby, I'm coming," in a flat voice, like he was talking in his sleep, and the crying moved. That is the detail I need you to hold on to. The crying stayed 20 feet ahead of him no matter how far he walked. It never got closer. It backed up, patiently, row by row, deeper into the field, and it cried the whole way, and my brother followed it the way you follow your mother through a market. I ran for my grandfather. Lolo. Tasio was 70 years old and half-blind, and he did not run to the cane. He did not shout. He went to the kitchen, took the ash pot and the salt jar, and he laid a line of ash and salt across the back of our yard, slow and even, corner to corner, humming while he did it, the way a man hums while he fixes a fence. Then he stood behind that line, and he called my brother. Not Nonoy, his baptismal name, Jose Maria, because the things in the cane know the name everyone uses. That is why we give children call names. My Eloachlo told me later. The nickname is the one you wear outside. The real name is the one your family keeps indoors. Jose Maria, he called, in a bored voice. A bored voice. I remember thinking, how can he be bored? Supper's ready. Your rice is getting cold. Come in now. The crying faltered. Out in the dark cane, it hitched, like an actor who has forgotten the next line. My Lolo clicked his tongue and said it again, exactly the same. Bored, almost annoyed. Jose Maria, rice is getting cold. And my brother turned around. We watched him come out of the rows, slow, blinking, annoyed about his rice. He walked to the yard, sat down at the table, and asked where the fried fish was. He remembered nothing. He did not remember standing up. He did not remember the cane. But as he crossed into the yard, the sound behind him changed. The baby's sob turned, right in the middle of a breath, into an old man's giggle. Wet, delighted, a giggle with no teeth in it. And then we heard small bare feet running away through the dry cane, fast, far too fast for anything with legs that short, giggling the whole way, until the rose swallowed it. My brother slept between my parents that night, and for a month after. The only thing he ever said about it, once, was in the morning. He sat up and said, the baby had too many teeth. Then he asked for rice, and he never spoke of it again. He is a seaman now, Nonoy, chief engineer on a cargo ship, a grown man with daughters of his own. He has no memory of that night, none at all, and we have never told him. If you are from my town, and you know him, do not tell him. Some doors you keep closed for people. That corner of the field burned that season. An accident during the pre-harvest burn. A fire that jumped the break and took about 2 hectares, including the section where the crying had led my brother. They replanted it, and the cane there came up wrong, stunted, gray at the joints. The workers started going around it, and then the owner went around it, and the last time I went home, 40 years on, that corner is still fallow, grass and scrub, in the middle of the richest land in the province. And my mother told me something I have never been able to put down. No birds land there, she said. After the burn, the birds stopped. All these years. Watch it for an hour. Everything flies around it. I became a nurse. I asked for nights, because nights don't scare me. I know what lives in them. And when a newborn cries at 3 in the morning on my ward, I check the window side first, every time, before I check the baby. My colleagues think it's a quirk. In my province we have a saying, some cries you answer, and some cries answer you. Story 5. An old logger from Surigao del Sur sent me this one. He said I could share it, so long as I taught you the rule about the tik-tik. Here it is. I was 19 when I went into the Lahu IHN country, and I am an old man now, so you can do the math. 1983. A logging concession in Surigao del Sur, Mindanao, so far in that the nearest road was a week's walk, and the company flew our pay in by helicopter once a month. 30 men. Lahu e Cheyenne. What you call Philippine mahogany. Trees so big 3 men could not link arms around one. Trees that were old when Magellan's ships were still drawings. I want to say this first, because nobody believes it anymore. We were not afraid of that forest. Loggers are not afraid of forests. We slept better there than I have slept anywhere since. What happened to us did not come out of the trees. It walked in through the front gate, on a supply run, with papers. His name was Rudy. He came in October with the monthly truck as far as the road went, then walked the last 2 days with the mule train, and the foreman took him on, because a man who walks 2 days to ask for work is a man you hire. He was polite. That is the word everyone used. Polite, quiet, did his share, smiled with his mouth. He kept his bunk squared away and he ate alone, down at the end of the mess table, and after the first week Aling Puring, our cook, a woman afraid of nothing on 2 legs or 4, told my father she did not like feeding him. My father was the lead sawyer. He asked her why. He asks for no salt, she said. No bagohong, no patis, no salt. He says he has a condition. Doming, I have cooked for camps for 20 years. There is no condition like that. There is only a man who cannot touch salt, and a man who cannot touch salt is not a man. My father laughed at her. He has asked forgiveness for that laugh every year of his life. The dog knew before any of us. Princess, the camp dog, a scarred yellow animal who had bitten a wild boar and lived, would not cross in front of Rudy's bunk. She would go around it, the long way, in the rain, rather than pass within 10 feet of where he slept. And at night, she would stand facing the dark under his hammock, with her hackles up, growling at the ground, not at the man, at the packed earth underneath him. And then the tick-tick started. If you don't know the sound, it is like a gecko, but wrong, bigger, slower. Patient, tick, tick, tick. You hear it in the provinces at night and you think nothing of it, until an old man goes still beside you, because every province in my country knows the rule about the tick-tick, and the rule is this: the sound lies. When the tick-tick is loud, the thing making it is far away. When it is faint, soft, barely there under the rain, it is close. It is very close. It could be under your floor. The nearer it comes, the quieter it lets itself be heard. It wants you to do the math wrong. The first week, the tick-tick was loud, out in the reserve, and we ignored it. The second week, it was fainter, out past the latrines. The third week, you could only hear it in the gaps between the generators. And that was the week the old Visayan men started stringing garlic over the doorways and laying lines of ash around the barracks. And when the young men asked why, the old men said, "Sleep well, that is all. Sleep well." Pedring died on the Saturday. We found him in his hammock at dawn, and I will not describe it well, because I did not look at it long. He was pale, pale the way paper is pale. There was not a wound on him, not a mark, and his eyes were open, and the mosquito net was still tucked in all the way around, and nothing in that camp had torn it or gone under it. The foreman said heart. He was 28. The men said nothing at all, which in a logging camp is a sound of its own. And that morning, before the horn, 2 of us saw Rudy coming back from the tree line with wet cuffs, saying he had gone to wash. Nobody washes before the horn. The water is cold before the horn. The old men set the table the next night. That is how I think of it. They set a trap with a table. Company rule, Sunday salo, feishlo. Everyone eats together, morale. The old men cooked, and they salted everything the way you salt for a fiesta. And they put ginger in the rice, ginger and garlic in everything, and we all sat down, all 30 of us, and we ate. Rudy sat at the end of the table, and he smiled, and he pushed his food around the plate, and he lifted the fork twice and put it down, and he ate nothing, nothing. He sat in the middle of 30 men sweating over a salted meal, and he did not eat 1 grain of rice, and I watched 4 old men look at each other across that table, and I watched my father stop chewing. My father told me what to do that night, and I did it, because I was 19, and he was the lead sawyer. We went to our bunks, and we did not sleep. We lay under the kulambo, the mosquito net, and we watched Rudy's hammock through the mesh, and we waited. And around 2 in the morning, Princess stopped growling, all at once. The way she stopped was worse than the growling. Then came the sound. I have heard men say it is a tearing. It is not a tearing. It is wetter than that, and slower, and you feel it in your back teeth. And the top half of Rudy sat up out of the hammock, pale, pale in the dark, arms unfolding, and the bottom half of Rudy stayed lying in the hammock under the blanket, still as laundry, and something opened from his back, wide and soft, the way a bedsheet opens in the wind. It went up through the smoke gap in the roof without a sound, and a moment later, out over the canopy, the tick-tick started, loud, loud and going away, laughing almost, tick-tick-tick, far away over the trees, wanting us to hear how far away it was. My father put his hand over my eyes. He was a hard man, a sawyer, and his hand was shaking so badly I could not see straight. You do not fight it in its own country. That is what the old men told the foreman at dawn. You do not hunt it with BOH-lows. You do not burn the forest. You leave. We walk out today, they said, or there will be 30 hammocks with 30 still legs in them by the end of the month. The foreman was a Manila man, an engineer, and he stood there in the morning light with his clipboard, and then he looked at the ash lines and the garlic and princess, who had not eaten in 2 days, and he said, "We walk out." He did one thing first, and I respected him for it ever after. He burned Rudy's bunk himself, and the ground under it, and he salted the ashes, and he said the words the old men told him to say, and then 30 men walked out of that camp and left a month's pay on the table. The walk to the road took 3 days. And this is the part I have told almost no one, because it is the part that still wakes me up. The tick-tick followed us, all 3 days, directly overhead, above the canopy, pacing us, and it was loud. The whole way, it was loud, tick-tick-tick, as loud as it was the first week, loud enough to be miles away. On the second night I could not stop myself. I said to old man Vicente, walking beside me, "At least it is far. The sound is loud. It is far." Vicente did not look up. Not once in 3 days did that man look up. He said, "Keep your eyes on the trail. It knows the rule too, boy. It has known the rule longer than we have. It is loud because it wants us comfortable." And then he said the thing that has never left me. It is not following us to catch us. It is following us to see where we live. The company closed that concession the next year. Men would not work it. I logged 2 more seasons in Quezon, and then I came to the city, and I married, and I drove a jeepney, and I have been a grandfather since before 50, and I live now with my son's family on the 15th floor of a building where you can see the whole bay. 15 floors up, concrete, no trees taller than a man within a kilometer. Some nights, above the roof deck, I hear it. A gecko, my son says. Pipes, says my daughter-in-law. Tick, tick, tick. Very soft. I am an old man, and I know the rule, and I have told you the rule, so do the math for me, because I no longer can. Soft means close. 5 stories, 5 forests, 5 people who came back with the same advice, and it was never about courage. The jungle is not empty. It is inhabited, and manners will carry you further than bravery ever will. If you're listening from the Philippines, you already know. Tell me in the comments which province you're from, and which rule your grandmother gave you. If you're listening from somewhere else, tell me where you are and what time it is there. I read every comment, and the best accounts become future episodes, credited to you. If this kept you company tonight, subscribe and turn on notifications. The rain isn't going anywhere. Neither are we. Sleep well. Check the windows once. And if you pass an old tree on your way home tomorrow, do me one favor. Say it. Tabi Tabi po. It costs you nothing, and it has saved more people than you will ever know.